Okay, 8.3, day 1 for homework help. Take a look at 3 problems. Going to do 2 problems where they ask us just to find the inverse of a square matrix. Remember, if you're not given a square matrix, there would be no inverse. Alright, and like I said, there's a second one where again I'm given another square matrix and just running through the steps. It's virtually the same as solving a system of equations, just you have more numbers is all. And then the last one that I'll look at is using a calculator to find the inverse of a matrix, the square matrix. Alright, so back to the first one. Now remember, before you do anything with your rules of I can rearrange the order of this, even though I wouldn't to this one, remember you want to tack on the identity matrix first. Because if by chance you did take the first and the third one and have them switch places, these two things would need to switch places also. So make sure that you put that down immediately when you see the problem before you do anything else. Now I'm not going to switch it because I've already got the 1 sitting here. So I'm going to go right to kind of my first step. And that is writing down my matrix. I've got 1, 2, 2. Again, put your row of dots and now put the identity matrix, so 1, 0, 0. And now looking at this matrix, I'm going to try to get rid of that 3, so I'm going to multiply this by -3 and add it to the second row. So -3 times the first row plus the second row. And again, you're welcome to do this on the side if you need to. It's going to be -3 plus 3, or 0. That's why we picked -3 in the first place. Remember, it's multiplying by -3, so -6 plus 7, or 1. That's lucky because we wanted that to be a 1 anyway. -6 plus 9, or 3. Don't forget these numbers. It's -3 plus 0, or -3, 0 plus 1, and 0 plus 0. And then I just simply have to add those two together, so row 1 plus row 3. And that's going to give me 0. It's going to end up giving me a -2, ends up with -5. Continue adding these numbers, I get 1, 0, and 1. And so there's the first step. They were nice enough to give us a 1 in that first position, and now we've gotten zeros here. So now think of what you would normally do. You want to just continue on this side to get the 1 here, which we got. Now I want to get rid of this -2. So my next step here, copy down the top row. That's not going to change, at least for a little bit. Copy down the second row now that I've got the 1 in the position that I want. And then we're going to end up multiplying that by +2, adding it to this row to get that to cancel. So 2 times row 2 plus row 3. So basically the exact same steps as what you did to solve in the previous sections, just that you have more numbers on the right side is all. Alright, so 0 and 0 of course will give me 0. +2, -2 gives me 0. That'll become +6, -5, or 1. Again, we got lucky. It's very convenient I have 1s in the main diagonal without having to do anything extra. Again, multiplying by 2, so -6 plus 1, or -5. 2 plus 1, or 2. Sorry, 2 plus 0, or 2. 0 plus 1, or 1. And now I've got the ones in the main diagonal. Now we can do the Jordan part of it. Let's get rid of these. So starting using this one, let's get rid of those 2 numbers. So now copy down the bottom row. It is completely done. This is where I usually say if you're doing your homework, obviously you can't do this on the test, but if you're doing your homework, go back and look at the answers and see if those 3 numbers are right. If those 3 numbers are right, then you're at least on the right track. If they're wrong, then you don't need to continue going on. You've got a mistake somewhere in your first few steps. Alright, so it looks like I'm going to multiply by -3 and add it to the second row. So -3 times row 3 plus row 2. 0 and 0 will still give me 0. 0 and 1 still gives me 1. -3 and 3 will give me 0. That's going to become +15 minus 3, or +12. -6 plus 1, -5. -3 plus 0, or -3. Looks like I would have to multiply by -2 to add it to this number to get it to cancel. So -2 times row 3 plus row 1. And again, because of these 2 zeros, those first 2 numbers won't change, so it's still 1 and 2. -2 and 2 should give me a 0. That will now become +10 plus 1, or 11. That's going to end up giving me -4 plus 0, so -4. And that would give me -2 plus 0, so -2. And now I'm almost done. The only thing I have left to do is get rid of that 2, and I'm going to use this one to do it. So my last step, copy down the last row. That is completely done. My second or middle row is also now completely done since it's 0, 1, 0 on the left. And last thing I need to do is multiply this number by negative 2 and add it to the top row. So negative 2 times the second row plus row 1. These two zeros will not change those two numbers, so still 1 and 0, of course. Multiply by negative 2, add it to 2, will give me 0. That gives me negative 24 plus 11, or negative 13. It's going to end up giving me positive 10 minus 4, so 6. And that would give me a positive 6 minus 2, so 4. And you notice, like we did in class, we started with the identity matrix over here on the right. We went through these steps. I now have the identity matrix over here on the left, and that means that what's over on the right is actually the inverse. So there is the inverse of our original matrix. All right, on to the second one. Same steps again. Before you do any rearranging, not that you would for this one, make sure you put the identity matrix next to it. All right, and now you can start doing your rules. It looks like I want to get rid of those two, so let's go ahead and copy down the first row. 1, 0, 0, my row of dots, 1, 0, 0. Looks like I will multiply by negative 3 and add it to the second row to get that 3 to cancel. So negative 3 plus 3 will give me 0. 0 plus 4 will give me 4. 0 plus 0 still gives me 0. That would be negative 3 plus 0, or negative 3. 0 plus 1, and 0 plus 0. Again, if I'm going a little fast, go ahead and do this on your own, and then you can always kind of replay it or do the work on your own on the side if you need to. I'm going to multiply by negative 2 and add it to the third row now. So negative 2 times row 1 plus row 3 gives me negative 2 plus 2, or 0. 0 plus 5. 0 plus 5. Negative 2 plus 0, so negative 2. 0 plus 0, and 0 plus 1. So completing that first step, I've got the one that I want here. I've gotten these to be zeros. Now I need to look at those two and ask myself, how do I get a 1 there? Well, they're right next to each other, so I can, of course, just subtract them. So I have 1, 0, 0. That top row will not change, at least for now. Actually, it won't change at all because it's already 1, 0, 0. All right, now I'm going to subtract them. So you can do this however you want. You can say it's row 3 minus row 2, or I'm just going to say multiply row 2 by negative 1, add it to row 3. It's the same thing, however you like doing it. Just be careful with your double negatives. So I'm going to have 0. Negative 4 plus 5, of course, gives me the 1 that I was looking for. 0 plus 5 still going to give me 5. This would now become positive 3 minus 2, or 1. This is now negative 1 plus 0, and 0 plus 1. And now remember, I combined the second and third rows together to get this row, so it's my choice. I can either pick the second row and put it down here, or I can keep the third row and leave it here. It's really up to you. I'm going to pick the second row, just it's got a smaller number, but other than that, really no reason. Doesn't matter which one I pick, it eventually will work out, so this was row 2. If that's all you did is shifted a row, I usually don't need to see that step, but it's kind of nice to have it there. All right, I got the 1. Now use that 1 to get rid of this 4. So, copy down that first row, copy down the second row, and now if I multiply by negative 4, I'll be able to get rid of that 4 that's in the third row. So still have the 0 here. Negative 4 plus 4 will give me 0. That's going to become negative 20 plus 0, so negative 20. Negative 4 minus 3, so negative 7. It's going to become positive 4 plus 1, or 5. And negative 4 plus 0, so negative 4. And I'm going to do a whole nother step, even though this is where usually when we did the solving we would say, okay, I'm just going to divide by 20. I'm going to have to divide all these by 20. You can see that you're going to run into kind of a messy fraction here and still fractions there. And that's okay. Sometimes that happens. Most of the time when you're finding an inverse, they aren't usually nice numbers. The book is going to give you nice numbers just because the book has spent some time to give you to go through and find problems that work out nice, but on average that's not going to happen very often. Quiz or test, I'll try to make the numbers work out as nice as I can. Alright, so what am I doing? I am multiplying or dividing that third row by negative 1/20. And that will make that 7/20 positive now. That would make that negative 1/4. Please simplify all of your fractions, and positive 1/5. Now, if you are doing this and you don't want to write a whole nother step, and you want to say I'm dividing this by negative 20, and then maybe do this, and do 0, 0, 1, and then write down, 7/20, negative 1/4, 1/5. Just to save yourself a step, that's fine. I don't mind you doing that. All right, now think about what your goal is. I want to get rid of these numbers. These are already gone. I basically need to use that 1 and get rid of that 5. So I've got one step left. The bottom row is completely done now. This would be the time where I would say, go check to see if that bottom row is actually right on your inverse, especially when you're dealing with the fractions, because they probably are making you less confident, but they are actually right. The top row, because of the 2 zeros here, the top row is actually done already. We can copy that one completely down. And then I need to multiply the third row by negative 5, add it to the second row so that I can get rid of this 5. So these 2 zeros will keep the 0 and the 1. Negative 5 plus 5, of course, is going to give me 0. And now I may need to show my work, especially if I'm on a test and I don't have a calculator for this. I'm going to multiply this by negative 5. So it's negative 5 times 7/20. Remember to simplify if you can. This is going to eventually give me 1/4. This is eventually going to give me negative 7. Let's see here. Negative 5. Yeah, it looks like I'm going to have negative 5 times 7, so negative 35. I'm going to simplify or reduce that first. It'll make things much easier if I do that. And it looks like I'm going to end up with negative, why can't I get, okay, there we go. Negative 7/4. There we go. I don't know what I was having so much trouble with. Alright, so negative 7/4. I still have to add that 1 to it. So I'm adding 4/4, and that's going to give me negative 3/4. So here is that number. Now obviously if it's the homework you can use your calculator, but try to get practice doing this. So think, what did you do? I multiplied by negative 5, added it. So multiply by negative 5, which is what I did here, and then add that 1. So here I multiply by negative 5, which is going to give me negative 5/4. This one's a little easier. Add negative 1 or subtract 4/4. Alright, and double checking that. Oh, I multiplied by negative 5, so this should be positive. So it's positive 5/4 minus 4/4, or positive 1/4. And the last one, multiplying by negative 5, so that's going to give me negative 1. Adding 1 gives me 0, a little bit easier. And if all you did is made a little mistake on the fractions like I almost did here a couple times, obviously that's fine. If it happens on the test, I can see you made a little error. You still know what you're doing, and that's what you're trying to show me, is that you have an idea of what you're doing. Obviously, if you really want to check to see if that's the inverse, you can take that function, or those two matrices, and multiply them together to get the identity. Alright, the last one is, how do I do this with a calculator? If by chance you have a calculator on the test, or some of your homework problems they ask you to do this, then you can simply type it in. All you need to do is, first of all, make sure it's a square matrix. If it's not a square matrix, you just immediately say there's no inverse. All you need to do is go to your matrix category again. So if you remember, you want to hit second, and then this x to the negative 1 button right above it, it says matrix. And then you're going to go over to edit, pick one of these, it doesn't matter which one you want, tell it the dimensions you want it. I want it to be 3 by 3. And now I'll simply enter these in. So 3 enter, 2 enter, 2 enter. Remember, it goes across the rows. 2, 2, and 2. Negative 4, 4, and 3. And then once I have that entered in, I'll go ahead and get second mode, or that quits, or brings me to the home screen. Go back to that matrix category. Pick number 1 under names this time, because I don't want to edit it. It's already in there. And then this little x to the negative 1 button, if you hit that, it gives you the little inverse symbol. Go ahead and hit enter, and you can see it's going to give you your inverse. And you see that, again, we've got a pretty nice one. We've got a fraction. Not that I can't figure out what that fraction is, but remember, if you hit math, see number 1 there highlighted as already fraction. That means stands for fraction. Hit enter, or hit 1. Hit enter again, and it'll convert any fractions that you do have into fractions. So if you have something that's really messy and you have a calculator, you can convert it into a fraction very easily. Alright, that is your homework help for section 8.3 day 1. If you have questions, please let me know.